Okay, so this is a video for the notes on section 11.2, and 11.2 is talking about the area of a circle. So area of a circle is a formula that you encounter much earlier in your math careers, and it is written on the note sheet. There are two sets of, or two definitions. We're not going to deal with population density. We are going to talk about sector of a circle, so that's going to be our focus in this lesson. And it's actually the only idea in this lesson, so it's a single focused lesson, which is kind of nice. And it starts with area of a circle. So right here we've got area of a circle, and the area formula is pi r squared. So area of a circle equals pi times the radius squared. As an example, if we knew that the radius was 5, let's say 5 feet, then to find the area of that circle, we would say, okay, well, area is pi times 5 squared, and 5 squared is 5 times 5, so area is 25 pi. And you could either choose to leave that answer as 25 pi, and the units would be square feet or feet squared, or you could write it as a decimal. Then it would completely depend on what a textbook was asking, what a quiz or test was asking. If they want you to leave it exact, that's 25 pi. So that's exact. If they want you to do an estimate or a rounded amount or go to the nearest tenth type of question, then you would punch it into a calculator. So we would go over to our calculator and we can clear out what we have in here, and we would go 25 times pi. And all that's going to do is just give you the decimal amount. Oh yeah, that's right. This one. And on this one, I just have to go into my mode and change it, as some of you may have to do in your calculators to get it to show what you want. So I'm going to put it into classic, and then we'll go back out here and we'll try that 25 pi again. So 25 times pi, and we'll hit enter, and then we get our decimal. And everybody's calculator comes programmed with that. Some it's just set that way. Some you have to actually punch a button, but we've got the 78.5 if we were to go to the nearest tenth. So then I'm going to go back to here and I'm going to say, okay, it could also be 70. Was it 8.5? We better check. 78.5. So 78.5, and that would be feet squared. And again, those two circled amounts, they're the exact same thing. This is called an approximate, or it's rounded, and the other one's called exact. And we talked about that last lesson with the pi and whether you punch it into a calculator or not. So this is where we're starting this lesson, just with the area of a circle, and that gives us this entire shaded area. So it's how much space you have on the inside, and that's just what area is. So space on the inside. And the reason I'm saying that is because what we're going to do now, so space on the inside, is we're going to talk about the area of a sector. So a sector is just a piece of the inside. So we're just looking for that shaded space, or the area of that pi piece, basically. So the area of that shaded amount, so that is our sector, and it's just a piece of the inside of the circle. There are some equations they put over here to get it, and those are good equations. There's nothing wrong with them. I think they can be a little hard to interpret when they do two of them, and you can see the little word or here. So they're saying you can do it one of two ways. I think probably the most straightforward way to think about it is the second way. So that your area, that's what's on the left, the area, equals the measure of AB. So the arc measure divided by 360, that's the total degrees in the circle, times pi r squared. So this is the area of the whole circle. And this is the part over whole, which we did last lesson. So part over whole. And really what that is a percentage. So part over whole, you're saying what part is that little space? So you take whatever the arc measure is, divide it by 360. So that's the part that you're looking at divided by the whole. And honestly, all that is a percentage of the circle. So that's your percentage of the circle. So you're going to take your percentage of the circle and you're going to multiply it by the area of the whole circle. So your percent times your whole, and that gives you the area of your sector. As a for instance, let's say on this thing that we knew, so I'll just do an aside here. Let's say we knew that radius was 5. We just did a circle with a radius of 5, right? So let's say that we knew this little r here was 5. Well, that means the whole area, so the area of the whole circle, would be pi r squared. So that's the area of the whole circle. And we said either you would write that as 25 pi, or you could write it as 78.5, and that those two mean the same thing. One is rounded to the 10th, one is exact. And then if what we're after is just a percentage of this, let's say that angle looks like it's probably about 80 degrees in there, which means the arc length is 80 degrees. So let's say, again, in our example, that the measure of angle APB is equal to 80 degrees. What that then means is that the measure of the arc AB is 80 degrees. And that's what it means to be a central angle, which we did last time or last chapter. And now what we're going to do is we're going to use that central angle, and we're going to say, okay, take 80 degrees, divide it by 360. That's the percent of the circle that we're using, or that's the portion of the circle that we're using. And then we're going to multiply that by our 25 pi, which is our area of the whole thing. So again, percent times the whole thing, the whole area. So we're going to take our percent times the whole area, and that's going to give us our answer. So again, we've got our 25 pi, we know that's our area. 80 over 360 is our percent. So I'm going to go to the calculator, and I'm going to say 80 divided by 360, and we'll hit enter just to see what that is. So there's our percent, so 0.22 or 22%. And then we're going to multiply that by our area of the whole thing, which we said was 25 pi. So our 0.22222, or our 22%, times 25 pi, and we're going to get an estimate, which is 17.45, or we round up 17.5. So that means this little area of the sector would be, in the example we're using, 17.5. And that should be certainly smaller than the whole thing, which is 78.5, because we're only doing a little piece of it. So the whole thing, 78.5, depending on what that angle measure is in there, that's going to make how much of your percentage that you're using, and then you multiply by the whole area. That's really the whole lesson. So that example is the entire lesson. However, they're going to make some adjustments on the way they ask questions. So in a moment, I'm going to put up a second video that works through a set of examples that show the different ways that they're going to ask this. But again, all that they're doing, the basic focus here should be, what percent of the circle am I using? That's my degrees over 360 times the area of the whole thing. And then that tells you what that little pi piece would be. It tells you what that little area of that shaded sector is. And that's the basic idea of this lesson.